20 million children are out of
Out
school.
of school. I think many persons
Okay.
don't really understand what it means that 20 million persons are out of school. You know, these days we just hear numbers and we're like so familiar and so used to the media just giving us numbers, and we're almost like immune to even thinking about 200 people being killed or 100 persons dying a day. We just think, oh, it's just 100 persons. I cannot count 100 of my family members like
Yeah.
who are alive. I mean the immediate family members and the likes of that. Then talk more of when you hear 20 million people, it's like you have to merge villages and villages and villages, and still you will not get 20 million people.
Yeah. 20 million is a lot. 20 million is what we believe to be the population of Lagos or thereabouts.
Yeah.
20 million is like, I think London is about 9 to 10 million people.
Yeah.
If-
Yeah. Yeah.
That's 2 Londons. There are countries that are not even up to 20 million.
The
Like
Gambia,
they are not
Mali, and a couple of other.
they are not up to 20 million. So we are talking. Another way to present it is that if you pick, I think 5 children in Africa,
Yeah.
5 children in Africa that are not in school, 1 out of those 5 is a Nigerian.
Welcome to Boring Conversations. Today's conversation is with a writer and policy analyst whose work moves between careful observation and different forms of public arguments and the likes of that. He's the author of Deathbeds and Frozen Frames, as well as The Texture of Air, and his recent article on Even Steps, Nigeria's 26-year struggle to educate its children is why we are actually here today. That turns out to be a whole lot of conversations many persons either are tired of having, but here is someone who has taken his time over the course of a long period of time to get to investigate this particular phenomenon that we as a people, one way or the other, are plagued with a sense of literacy on the one hand. If you go to the US, they tell you Nigerians are almost like the most educated of people down there and all that. Whether that is true back home is still a conversation. We down here, one way or the other, will still get to answer in the short period of time. Our guest today has granted us a chance to talk to him on the subject matter and drawing on national data and comprehensive as well as comparative examples. That is the example of neighboring African countries and the likes of that. The article examines the distance between policy ambition and lived outcomes. It raises also difficult questions about literacy, sense of governance, and what it would mean for Nigeria to take basic education seriously as a national priority. Without further ado, I give you my guest for today. Welcome to Boring Conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today.
If someone is seeing you for the first time, who are we talking to today?
Um, I'm Sodiq Alabi. I'm a poet. I'm a writer. But more relevantly to this conversation, I'm a policy enthusiast and a policy analyst, researcher on educational policy in Nigeria. This has been an interest of mine that is at least 10 years old now, at least a decade old. I've been looking at the numbers over the years, and I've been sharing snippets of it on Facebook with with my friends and followers, and also on other social media platform. And over time, I see that on many indices we've stagnated. On some, we've made some uh, humble progress, but on most important indices, we've stagnated as a country. So, and education is, of course, very important to any country that is interested in development. If you want to develop, you need to have an educated population. So we know that. So that's why earlier this year, a few months ago, I set up Intel, Education Intelligence, and my whole idea around it, and this is still something that is still I'm figuring it out, is to help engender a data-driven or insight-driven conversation
Mhm.
on Nigeria's education. We want to move beyond just lamenting to actually getting the numbers, the data, and analyzing it and presenting it to general public, to stakeholders, to non-profit, to everyone who might be interested in improving the quality of education in Nigeria. And so we've been pushing out articles, looking at data. I've been reading and all that over the last few months, and we've been publishing those articles. So basically, I'm a Nigerian who's just passionate about the education sector and wants some action to fix the problem in the sector.
So, in summary, education is not a scam for you.
No, I don't think it's a scam. I think at the minimum, you need illiteracy to be at a certain level for a country to aspire to development. If you look at the trajectory of our modern life, you will see that every single developed country that you can point to, they got their literacy level to a certain level. They got their education enrollment to a certain level for them to start having multiplier effect
Mm-hmm.
in different aspects of their economy. So if your people cannot read, if they cannot write, it makes a lot of things difficult. For example, public health. How do they want to read instruction on the medicine they are getting? How do they want to interact with information, engage with information from, from public health authorities? Yes, you can use audio, you can use video for them, but being able to engage with written text is crucial. Being able to speak and write and listen and understand and comprehend in English language is important in our context because we are a multilingual country with 500 languages or more.
Yeah.
And before you get into the dialects and sub languages that we have to talk to each other, you need that main language, and which has been English language for a while now. To even connect to the international community, to take advantage of international opportunities, you need education. So the education we are talking about here is not even your university education. I'm not even that interested, although a part of, let's say, 10% of my work would be on university education, but 90% of my work will be on what we call basic education and secondary school education and the senior secondary school education. So basic education in Nigeria covers the first 6 years of education, primary school, and then the 3 years in junior secondary. But I'm also interested in all the way to SS3. After SS3, I care a bit, but not that much. Because at that point, you should have the literacy skills that you need to do well in life. You should
Sure.
be able to read, to be able to write, and so on. So education is not a scam. Sometimes there might be some mismatch in people going for degrees in some field that they are not very relevant and so on and so forth. But those are like I would say those are even nice to have problem because that means your people are educated. They can find their way from where they've missed the road to study a course that is not super relevant to their context, but they can move from there to elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You've given them the tools, you've given them the framework that they can use for other things. So it's a nice to have problem. Um, it's a problem, but a nice to have problem. But the real problem that we don't want to have are children that are not going to school. That's one. And the second one are children that are in school, but they are not learning anything. And that is this biggest problem that I see now in the country. Because you said 20 million children are out of
Out
school.
of school.
20 million. That's a big number.
And because I think many persons
Okay.
don't really understand what it means that 20 million persons are out of school. You know, these days we just hear numbers and we're like so familiar and so used to the media just giving us numbers, and we're almost like immune to even thinking about 200 people being killed or 100 persons dying a day. We just think, oh, it's just 100 persons. I cannot count 100 of my family members like
Yeah.
who are alive. I mean the immediate family members and the likes of that. Then talk more of when you hear 20 million people, it's like you have to merge villages and villages and villages, and still you will not get 20 million people.
Yeah. 20 million is a lot. 20 million is what we believe to be the population of Lagos or thereabouts.
Yeah.
20 million is like I think
Ghana.
London is about 9 to 10 million people.
Yeah,
It-
yeah, yeah.
That's 2 Londons. There are countries that are not even up to 20 million.
The
Like
Gambia,
they are not
Mali, and a couple of other.
they are not up to 20 million. So we are talking, another way to present it is that if you pick I think 5 children in Africa,
Yeah.
5 children in Africa that are not in school, 1 out of those 5 is a Nigerian. Or either 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 4.
Mm-hmm.
We dominate. If you look at it globally, we are also the largest country. I mean, we are also the country with the largest number of
Out of school
out of
children.
school children. So it's a big number. But what is actually bigger than that number is the fact that 73% of children who are actually in school cannot read. So let's say I think we have around 40 million children or more in school, primary and secondary school, up to junior secondary school. They did not, the survey did not really cover senior secondary school. So it's covered children that are between age 7 and 14. So that's your people in primary 3 to GS3.
Yeah.
And they found that 73% of them can. So that is actually more than 20 million children that cannot read. So you have 20 million out of school, you have 20 million or more, a little bit more in school, who are not able to read at a primary 2, primary 3 level. And these are children that are already teenagers. Some of them, most of them are they are already teenagers. Some of them are teenagers. Some of them are preteen. They are looking forward to
Young adults.
going to senior secondary school, writing their way to university and all that. So that's another big problem that we have on our plates. Children are in school, they are not learning. Children are out of school. So in Nigeria, we should not be joining that conversation that education is a scam. That might be a conversation they can have in the US, in the UK, because
Parts of
they
Europe.
have already achieved universal literacy. We are still around, depending on the data that you or the survey that you pick, we are around 60 to 65% literate. That means 40% to 35% to 40% of our people cannot read. And when we say literacy, what they are testing is part of a sentence. So you understand? It's part of a sentence. Can you be part of a sentence? Then they consider you basic literacy. You have basic literacy. If you look at the data for functional literacy, that means somebody that can read a full sentence and understand it. But that's another thing. Being able to read and understand a full sentence, you would realize that most Nigerians are still not functionally literate. So we cannot join that conversation that education is a scam. We are just not there at all.
does it scare you when you, like, you step out of your house and then you look at the vast majority of persons, and these persons are going to be with the country or out of the country for the next, let's say, let's even follow the life expectancy of the average Nigerian in the 50s. So if this person is like 18 now, the person have more or less in and about 30, 40 more years to be alive, and the chances that this person would want to even admit in his 20s or 30s that the person is an illiterate is almost not there, because you need to first of all realize that something is wrong for you to like make the changes, and then in your 20s, 30s, the chances that you want to make those self-reflections might not be there. And even if you end up making those self-reflections with yourself and with your family, the chances of even doing adult education and the likes of that is so little. So what are the chances that we can escape this particular situation as a people?
Yeah, it's in Nigeria, if you miss the bus to school, like you don't get to school in your up to
Yeah.
your teenage years, you are most likely condemned to a life of illiteracy. So we don't have much, we don't have many programs on adult literacy. This is something we used to have in
Sure,
the
sure.
in the colonial days in the 60s and so on. They used to go to churches, they used to go to mosque, they used to go to community centers and teach other people how to read and write. That was a time when we, recognized the importance of literacy. We don't have that many of them anymore. So that's actually something you can see in the data, because as you look at the literacy rates in Nigeria, as you go up the age, the literacy is higher in
Mhm.
people that are older than in people that are younger. So it means people that did not get educated in the 80s, they are still illiterate. People that did not get educated in the 90s, they are still illiterate as children. They are still illiterate as adults now. So, and it's all the impacts that will have, they remain. They continue to suffer the impact of not being able to read and write.
So like they
People
will
might,
not be able to
people that,
franchise on
yeah,
their own. They will not be able to make some civic responsibility and take decisions by themselves and all
yeah,
that. And we will continue to see the effect play out in our elections, in the ways we talk about tribe and the ways we talk about regional politics and the likes of that. And a whole lot of other conversations will continue like that.
yeah. You look at many of the problems that Nigeria is facing in terms of insecurity, and you will see the impact of our illiterate population, you know, on that, on having a large illiterate population. The impact it has is obvious in those conflicts. Um, if you are educated, you automatically your worldview becomes a bit expanded. That doesn't mean that you can not become a violent person and so on, but the chances becomes reduced, and you you have more options, things to do. So, for example, myself, I'm from a historical farming family. My ancestors, my grand up to my grand father, my paternal grandfather were farmers, big farms, all the way from Oshun to places like Ondo State, huge farms. My dad, you know, he was able to get educated thanks to the free education of Obafemi Awolowo
Yeah.
and the likes. And we now have members of our family spread into different fields of life. That doesn't mean we can still not farm, right? But we have more options away from farming to other things that the modern world has to offer. So I still have relative who farms. My uncle retired as a teacher, and he had investment so he has some farms like poultry and all that. So it's not like we are abandoning the farming permanently like that, but we have more options. If the farming is not going on well, we can go to other. So education gives you that option. You can become a teacher, you can become a doctor, you can become an engineer, you can become, be coding and so on. People that don't have that education, they are restricted to maybe something they learned like handwork, and some of them might not be able to get the money to buy equipment for their handwork, and you see they become idle hands for other people to take advantage of. So I'm not saying education will cure everything.
Of course.
Even if you're educated, you can still fall into some of this things. It just reduces the chances, and it increases the chances when you are not educated or when the education is not strong enough. Like you still graduate from primary school, but you can't read. So you are the same thing as somebody who didn't actually go to school. So I'm talking about quality education that leaves people literate, functionally literate, able to read, interested in reading, and when you read, you have access to books, you have access to ideas that go beyond your immediate community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I grew up in a small in a small city or a big town, either of the two. And before the era of social media and so on, I had access to books, my dad's books. There was a library in my town that is no longer functional, unfortunately. I will go there and will, read books. So I was reading African writer series when I
Yeah.
was like 11. I was learning about things in Zambia. You know, uh,
Kenneth Kaunda.
Kahunda. I was reading about from authors from Ghana, authors from all over Africa, even it's up to the US.
Mm-hmm.
People like James Baldwin and so on. I was assessing them from the corner of Iwo, in Oshun, and that helped in the kind of ambition you start to have, the kind of places you can see yourself, you can visualize yourself to be in. You are no longer limited by that small, environment that you are, that corner of the world that you are, and it helps. If you cannot read, then you are limited to listening to people here, which is also useful, but not at the same level as reading. So yeah, I think Nigeria standard that problem that when you don't get educated as a child, you don't get educated as an adult. So you are basically condemned to a life of illiteracy, and that is not good for you as a person and not good for your society also.
In your article, you returned to 1999, and many of us know the significance of that particular year, return to democracy, and conversations in and about that. But also, you looked at the launch of the universal basic education as a moment of national hope. What problem was UBE meant to solve at its core, and what did policymakers get right about that particular moment?
Yeah, I think the UB, how 1999 is important to us in
Yeah,
Nigeria.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was a year that we returned to democracy. We've had military rule for 15 years since 1984.
Yeah.
Um, we've had military rule, Buhari, General Babangida, Abacha, and just a few months
Oh,
of.
Abdulsalam, and then yeah,
No, and Shoneka had like a few months,
yeah.
and
Okay, okay.
Absalami had like
Yeah.
another few months in the Sadi, which was all military or non-democratic governance. And one of the things that suffered during that era was education. So in the 70s, if you, I don't think you were born then, and I was not born then, but
Sure,
of course
sure.
we read books. In the 70s and 76, Obasanjo was the general that was in charge of the country, and he started something called Universal Primary Education Program. The idea then was to get all children into primary school, and they were able to get a lot. In fact, they underestimated how popular that program would be. And that led to, the program suffering in part because, they did not have enough money for classroom and so on. But
Yeah.
for me, some people use that to criticize the program, that is a failure and all that. But for me, that's a nice problem to have. It's
You
better
say
to
we they
have more.
criticize her for using
You
the teams
start
and stuff.
scrambling to build classroom for them than for you to have classroom with no kids. So, that is what the civilian government that came in 79 should have continued in expanding, and then the military government that came after that should have continued building on that legacy. Anyway, that didn't really work. By the time we got back to 1999, and that is why the NDHS survey that came out in 1999 is very, very, very important to us because it shows where the country was around that period, 1999. Then primary school enrollment was still poor.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have not had any education. So this is what 1999 said. 32.6% have not had any education. So of Nigerians, 32.6% of them. And then about the rest, they had only primary or secondary education. So we have only 9%, that's 9.1% that had higher than secondary education. So it can be polytechnic, it can be NCE, it can be university. You get my point?
Sure.
And then, so that's a big problem for any new democratic government because democracy requires literacy.
To make
That's
choices
what
and all that.
that's what at least what some people say Nigeria is not ready for democracy because of our illiteracy and poor education record. Because democracy requires literacy. It requires people to be able to read and exercise their franchise on their own, not being told, put your finger here. You need a lot of people to be able to do those things themselves, to access information, to be informed electorates. That's a major issue that we have. So literacy is how you solve that. It's partly how you solve that, not the entire solution, but it's partly how you solve that. So Obasanjo, President Olusegun Obasanjo, who was the head of state that started UPE in 76, now came back and did UBE, which now try to expand this to junior secondary school level. So that you will have at least 9 years of education. And what they try to do is that that basic education in Nigeria used to be under local government. And then local governments were owing salaries. the chairman would say that they did not get allocation, zero allocation, and all that. So they were owing teacher salary. If you remember, or in the 90s, primary school teachers used to go on strike.
Like up until the 2000s, even it was like a very, very common
They
thing.
used to go on strike. It's just like ASU strike that we have in the university now. We used to have in the primary school. When I was in primary school, I did not complete my primary Cs because they went on strike almost throughout that
For
session.
whatever reason, I was also like then guilty of this joy that we used to go on strike. And the only reason why I didn't like strike was the fact that my mom, despite her education, like your family also still did farms and the likes of that. So while we were children, we were happy that we need to go for these strikes. We didn't know the implication and all that, but the only pain there was that we will go to farm more and save for the roasted yams and all that. We, we were very angry that we have to go for this strike because of farm, but at the same time we knew we have more time to play football and all that. But yeah, that's in
Yeah,
retrospect.
it was a big thing. It was a big thing then. We should not be, you can have strike maybe with a few days, one day, things like that, but months long strike in primary education it should be a no-no. So they took it from local government who are like, okay, you are the one not paying salary. They gave it to state governments. And then in that act, the Basic Education Act that was passed after, they said that federal government intervention in basic education has to be as a support to states. So it's basically the federal government itself handicapping itself from direct intervention in basic education. So today, whatever federal government wants to do in education, they have to do it as a support to state. They can't just go into primary school or junior secondary school and do anything without the state. It's all comes from our idea of federalism and centralization and so on. But personally, I see literacy or education as a national issue
Project.
that should be handled nationally. It should be decentralized to the extent that decentralization helps. You understand? It should not be decentralization for its own sake. It should be that states are able to do this better, and they are doing it better, not theoretically, but in reality. If that is happening, then of course let the states do it. If it's not happening, if the states are failing, then the federal government should have the right to intervene in those states. So UBA has done a lot of work. It's one of the things holding up our education by itself, with one hand, so that the whole building will not collapse on itself. UBA has been responsible for infrastructure in schools, building classrooms. You cannot go to, it's difficult to find any public school in Nigeria
Without a
without
logo or without
yeah,
the emblem stamped to one wall or the other.
yeah. So UBE has been, I'm not saying UBE has failed. It has tried its best. Just that the result is not on its side, but the problem is not UBE alone. The problem is that the states are supposed to carry, because it's their baby, they're supposed to carry most of it. Your Bible will say that if you want to carry a baby, the baby hands needs to be open for you to be able to put your hand underneath the armpit and carry the baby, right?
Yeah.
If the armpit are closed, then it's difficult to carry the baby. So the state themselves are not making themselves easy to boost, to help. And even the money for UBE, because the UBE is about counterpart funding. So the federal government is making a certain amount of money available every year directly from its revenue. The federal government, takes the money, they close their eyes in Abuja and say, this money, 2% of our revenue goes into this fund. But for a state to get this money, the state must also put down this amount of money. And state governors will not put down that money, and they will leave the free money from federal government. They will abandon it with UBA for years. So how do you solve that? But anyway, those are excuses as far as the result is concerned. Because when we now say, okay, 26 years after, where are we? Now, at the beginning, I said that we are 28% of children in 1999 were not in school. Not children, of adults surveyed in Nigeria. Were not in school, 14 to 49 or so. And then for 32.6%, right? That's around 1/3. And today, the latest survey put it at 28.2%. That's basically nothing. Like no improvement. That's what I mean. We've gone from 32% to 28%. Some people might celebrate that, but I won't, because that's 26 years and you've only removed less than 4 percentage points. More than a quarter of people in Nigeria have never been to school. That's what it means. More than a quarter.
And it's not looking good for the giant of Africa.
It's not. And it affects the whole entire continent because of our population.
Yeah,
If we
because
don't get our act together, it affects the entire continent. So 1 in 4 Nigerians have never been to school. More than 1 in 4, not 1 in 4, a little bit more than 1 in 4. I've never been to school. So I don't think we've made progress. We've made more progress in getting people to university, which is great. But like I said at the beginning of my talk, is that I'm not that interested in university education. I'm interested in basic education. If we get basic education right, we might not even need university education as much as we think we do.
yeah, because people can go into technical education, find
Yeah,
themselves with just a
yeah,
basic education. I think America was it one of the talks given by Ben Carson. I think after he lost one of those presidential bids, he tried getting involved in. I can't remember the school now, but he was talking about the fact that there was a time that Americans, like railway workers, miners, and everybody, used to read the newspaper on a daily with little or no formal education as such. But he was lamenting the decline in basic education amongst young Americans, and how Chinese and Japanese and every other persons are the ones now representing America in their competitions and all that. And then you look back at our situation, you find out that there was a time also that many persons would buy periodicals, would buy journals and all that, and get to read. African Writer series you talked about. I'm working on a docu series on that also. I'm in conversation with key persons who have the right and all that. It was made available to the general population. It wasn't popular. It wasn't made popular by the West. The West provided the platform and all that, but then those who read them were Africans majorly,
yeah.
and then the West supported in whatever way of translation and all that in France and all that. But the bulk majority of people who were reading those books on literature, on market literature and all that, were predominantly Africans, but you don't find that at the moment in our situation. And you've also acknowledged that Nigeria has made some progress in school attendance and secondary education and all that. Why is it important to recognize these gains even when we try to criticize the government? And for those persons who want to just recognize these gains alone, what do you have to tell them as it concerns, the dangers as to how slow we made progress? Because 26 years is not a joke. It's this period we've had Obasanjo twice with the possibility of a third term bid that was down there. Yar'Adua has become our president, died. Jonathan was president once on his own term and then completed the term of his boss. In and about that period, we've had Sambo as VP. We've had Osibanjo as VP for 8 years. Buhari is dead now. We've had him for 8 years also. We've had the current president. This is going to his third year now in office. And many persons don't realize the length of time 26 years still is, and for so slow a progress we've made. Uh, should we be alarmed? Should we be on the streets? I don't really buy so much into the idea of our own brand of protest, but protest nonetheless still needs to be there one way or the other. Should we be screaming? What should we be doing at the moment? We and the
Um,
government.
yeah. I think it's good to acknowledge um what is going on well. Okay. I don't believe in just blanket criticism.
Yeah.
There are things that we've got right. We are sending more kids to university, to higher institution. That's some positive. That if you don't give the credit, it will discredit your own intervention, your own criticism, because politicians will see you as somebody who is just pointing out their failures.
Mm-hmm.
And they've made some progress. You have to acknowledge that. You have to be ready to acknowledge that. Another thing with acknowledging progress is that it can also allows the countries to identify things that are working and see if we can replicate them elsewhere.
Yeah.
so it's important to recognize things that are going on well. The second thing is for people that might want to now focus on what is going on well, like, okay, we've reduced illiteracy, more kids are now in school. We now have to tell them that we have more kids that are out of school in the absolute number because our population is growing. If your population growth is faster than the rate of your extra enrollment, you are basically not solving the problems that you have. Because as you are increasing your enrollment, but population is growing faster, that means more kids are not in school. Even though in absolute number, your school number looks to be
Good.
increasing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, your out of school is also increasing. And that's what has happened to our out of school. So our enrollment has gone up, our out of school population, has also gone up. And that means you have a lot of people that are not educated that might still be a problem to your country. And other challenges might also come and now impact on the little enrollment that you have, the enrollment gate that you have. Look at the Northeast, for example. Before 2009, you can say they are making some progress. But now they now have crisis that is making it difficult for some people to go to school in some places.
Yeah.
Schools are being shut down in the Northeast, in the Northwest, in the North Central.
Even in the South,
So,
I called an auntie of mine recently, and she told me they had closed for the December break. That was like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, "Why is that so?" She's like, "They're just like scared that stuffs might encroach down there, so they just want children to be off school and all that." So this is like up typical south of Nigeria and those type of conversations down there.
yeah.
So
So, when you spend, it's another Yoruba proverb. When you spend so much time in the toilet, bad flies are going to meet you there. When you spend something that you're supposed to do fast and get it to 100%, we spent 50 years on it, and now we now have crisis meeting us on the journey and distracting us from getting to where we should go. If we had gone to 100% 20 years back, we would likely not have as many recruits for Boko Haram, for all these groups as we have today.
yeah, because it's born
So
out of
you
ignorance.
cannot leave 25% or so of your children, 28% of your people uneducated out of school. Another percent, or another a lot of them that were in school learned nothing. You cannot have that. Like have a population functionally illiterate and think that you can sleep well at night. It's difficult, especially when you don't have a very strong governance, a very strong security system. It's difficult. And that is the lesson that we are learning. So we need to fix the problem. We cannot say we've made some progress and we'll be celebrating. We need to fix some problem. Another issue, and this is a very important aspect of it, is that Nigeria's illiteracy is becoming a regional issue. So that means there are places where you cannot make much gain. In the Southwest, for example, you can still make gain. I'm not saying the Southwest is perfect, but it is getting to a stage where almost everyone in the Southwest has been to school. They can read to an extent. It's getting to that stage in the Southeast where that is also true. The same thing in the South, which is an anomaly that we create in Nigeria.
That's
The, the, the,
because I was born
the
and I
Niger
grew up.
Delta region.
I was born around that area, so it always doesn't make sense when people ask me,
Yeah,
well,
geographically, there is nothing like that, but
I'm like,
we have to politically, we have to create it for political reasons.
but then you also have like places like the Middle East, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Those type of conversation.
So the southern Nigeria, let's just put them in a
Yeah,
box
like
like
going back to the old region.
to Lord Lugard era. The southern region has made tremendous progress in education. that you cannot make more significant progress in that area. You still can make. I don't want to be misunderstood. You can make progress, but not significant. Which means that the bulk of the work is now in the north, and there will have to be a disproportionate investment, attention in the north, and this is not going to be as easy as if the problem is spread across and we can tackle it from different states of the federation. I wanted to answer the other part of your question, which is what should we be doing as citizens and maybe as government?
Okay, but
I
then
think
before you
okay.
get to answer that question, if you look at, I don't know if you're familiar with Greek mythology, the story of Odysseus, you get to see that when he met the one-eyed Cyclops, this guy asked him, "What's your name?" You know, when he was trapped and all that, Odysseus had a problem with Poseidon, who was the father of this one-eyed Cyclops and all that. And he said, "My name is Norman." And then when Odysseus and his men, in order to get out of the door of the stone door and all that, they had to like struck the struck off his eye, and then he was blind and all that, and he was like, "No man is killing me, nobody is killing me," and nobody came to his rescue, because how can anybody come to your rescue when nobody actually is killing you? And why I'm trying to get this myth down here is born out of, there have been lots of conversations recently. Also, you've been engaged in some conversations up north, and you just see the blank, how do you say, insults that come without, they just get to tell you, you don't understand anything that happens in the north, you don't understand anything, you don't know the history of the north. I can beat my chest today till tomorrow that I've been to every part of Nigeria. I've done research in, if you check the catalogs and all that, you most likely would find my name in their archives or in their libraries that almost don't exist one way or the other, from Calabar to Abakaliki to Enugu to Anambra, up north, Sokoto and all that. But if people are not willing to accept the fact that there's a problem in the north that we see it in Lagos, you see it in Ibadan, you see it in different places and all that. If people have refused to accept this reality that at least there's a disproportionate situation in terms of education and all that, and people calling it out, is not that they are insulting the region, it's just that you are just stating fact. If I call you Sodiq, that's your name. You will not tell me, "Stop calling me that, you are insulting me." It's not an insult, it's your name. Even if your father, some persons bear this in Miriam, in the Christian faith they bear Mary. Some translations hold it to, in Christian teachings, it translates partly to bitterness because of the supposed bitter history and life the Virgin Mary had in her life because of the birth of this her son that ended up dying and the likes of that, as the story goes down there. If you call somebody that and say your name means bitterness, the person shouldn't necessarily be angry, because that's what history has come to attach to that name. In our situation, why is it so difficult to accept that, black is black, white is white, and if we must change it, we can still change it, but we shouldn't engage in this revisionist idea of modern history? This is not even old history. This is history happening in our very eyes.
Yeah, it's difficult, and that's what I was hinting at. If the problem is all over the place, it makes it easy to say, let's solve this problem, and people know that you are not insulting them or you are not condescending, being condescending towards them. If it has become concentrated in a region, and then your intention can be questioned when you start highlighting it. So what I try to do is to highlight the problem in the South also, because like I said, even though we have almost achieved, we are very close to 100% enrollment in Southern state.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that all those kids in school are learning. So you still have a lot of children in schools in the Southern state that are actually not learning. So that's a big problem. Like your state is about 30, only 30% passed, or were able to read simple sentences, and they're already in schools. So I try to do that to be balanced, to say, okay, there is this problem in the south, also it's also in the north. But increasingly that problem is being restricted to the north. That's the bulk of the problem is in the north. And we will have to find a way to call it out without being condescending, without being insulting. It's not like northerners uh, have any issue that ensures that they cannot go to school. No, there is nothing that stops them from going to school.
The opportunity has not just
The
been given to
intelligence is
them.
there. The intelligence is there. The culture is not against it. I'm a Muslim, and I know that's a Muslim. We have to be educated. We have to learn how to read. The first thing that was said to the Prophet Sallallahu
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the Quran was Iqra, read. So I know that is not a problem. But there are issues internally. There are political will issue. There are governance issues that we have to figure out. And it cannot, I don't allow anyone to shut me up on the issues. Just tell me you are from the South, you cannot talk about it. Because even if, see, even if we split up Nigeria today, the problems in southern Nigeria will still affect northern Nigeria. And the problem in northern Nigeria, the independent northern Nigeria as a country, will still affect independent southern Nigeria. It will not be to the same degree, but because you have a long border with each other, down and up the map, you cannot shut yourself from each other's problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why United States, as developed as it is, has to contend with drugs that are coming from southern and other parts of of their
Yeah,
Americas, the whole
region. You see
Americas.
the whole conversation now about Venezuela. Trump
Yeah,
has been on that since from his first term.
it's difficult to insulate yourself from your neighbors. Look at the UK, for example. All the irregular migration issue they are having is
Yeah,
coming from France. All of it, like most of it, is
yeah,
from
because when
France.
they get there, France doesn't even want
Even
this.
though there is no land border between the two countries,
Yeah, the
but
water.
the channel can be,
Oh, well,
is short enough for all these dinghies, all these boats, or to get across. So the UK cannot say, okay, we've left EU. The problem, it doesn't, it still, it comes to you. So even if you say you split the country, and southern Nigeria will look good on paper, because our literacy rate will be very high, school enrollment will be very high, and so on and so forth. But we cannot insulate ourselves from what is going on in the north, and they themselves cannot do it to what is going on in the south. There will still be continued migration in between the two countries forever. So look at Ethiopia and Eritrea. They still have contact. Sudan and South Sudan, they still have contact. They
yeah.
still so my point is that problem is my problem, is your problem, is everyone's problem. The fact that in the northeast, 62% of women cannot read and write, and in the northwest, 60% of women cannot read and write. They are illiterate in English. That's a problem for the entire country. Some people will start telling you that what about literacy in Arabic, literacy in Hausa? Very important skills to be literate in many languages.
But
But
where can you use it?
these things are, we are testing English because it is the language that all of us have agreed to speak. I can't learn 500 languages in Nigeria, but if I learn English, I'm hoping that anywhere I go in Nigeria, I'll have people I can speak the language to. So that's why we test that literacy in English. And it's important, you have reports, you have news being served in English language, you have education being delivered in English language, and so on. So what's the excuse? People can be literate in more than one language, but English has to be primary, and we need to achieve universal literacy in that language. So if we are not achieving it in the north, east, and northwest, those two regions are very huge in terms of population in Nigeria. And even when you had North Central, it's still not great for the north. But in the south, southeast is already above 80% for women, south 84%, southwest 84%. You are doing decently well there. But then you go up north, and then it comes down. We have to solve that dichotomy. We have to solve that. We have to bridge that gap. So we have to figure out a way to advocate on it. So I'm talking about solution as citizens now. And a lot of people in the north are also passionate about these issues on a national level and on a regional level. And a lot of people, including myself in the south, who are from the south, but I see myself as a Nigerian, are also passionate about it all over the country. So we need to talk about it. We cannot get tired. This is not a problem that you can say, I give up on. This it strikes at the heart of our nationhood, at the heart of our opportunity for development. If we don't figure it out, Nigeria is going to be left behind for the foreseeable future. Maybe there will be a future where literacy will not be important. With all this AI being developed, I don't know. Who knows the future? I can't talk 200 years ahead. But for this reality that we are, for this era that we are, and in the foreseeable future, literacy will be central to development. And Nigeria will be left behind unless we figure it out.
Where did we...
Another issue that I want to highlight is that apart from the regional dichotomy, the regional disparity that we have, and the gender disparity that we also have a class disparity, in the sense that anyone with a bit of money in Nigeria, they are able to send their children to private school where they are able to learn at a better rate than public schools. And that is one of the reasons why we're actually not working hard on this issue. All of us can say, we've been talking about this all this while, and the politicians are not listening, but we've not actually done enough. And the reason why we've not done enough is because you and I, with children, our children are in private schools in Nigeria. If they are in Nigeria, they are in private schools in Nigeria because we can afford the school fees, and they are learning there.
And when they finish learning, we are saying, oh, maybe private university, but if it's not so well, okay, there's always a chance to get a visa and then get an admission.
They go abroad. So you have a population that is well educated in Nigeria, the top 10% of the population, well educated. They can compete with anyone outside of the country. They go abroad, they go to the best universities in the world, and they excel. And we use them to feel proud as Nigerians.
This is Nigeria.
But it's basically nonsense in the sense that they don't represent Nigeria. Do you understand? Their sources, to an extent, does not really represent the average reality in Nigeria, because the average Nigerian in secondary school or in struggles to pass UTME. They try to pass WAEC, but we all know what happens with WAEC.
Yeah. We know the whole WAEC story is
I don't like using WAEC because we all know what goes on with WAEC, and they've realized what goes on with WAEC now. WAEC itself has realized it. They are trying to go.
Are they just realizing it now? Or is it because they can no longer contain the whole?
Because you already see the huge gap between WAEC pass rate and UTME pass rate, and it's no longer tenable. It's untenable. If you are telling me that these kids are passing A1, A, B2, B3 in WAEC, and then they are
Cannot.
doing their UTME and they cannot score 200. And
One
70%
for an
of these
objective
kids cannot
exam.
score 200. So there is something definitely wrong somewhere. So they've recognized that and they are trying to fix it with CBT and all that. But that's another thing entirely. But my point is, these kids, they are struggling. Some of them cannot speak, they cannot write, they cannot speak in English language, they cannot use the English language, they cannot read anything complicated, complicated passages or comprehension, all those essays that we used to read and answer questions on in exam back in the days. If you give them to an average 14-year-old in Nigeria, he or she is going to struggle. This is the reality today. And it's something that you can just do randomly, go to a public school, not private school, and pick 10 children randomly, and you'll find that a good number of them cannot read a primary 6 passage
And comprehend.
and comprehend and be able to answer the questions under that primary 6 passage that you've given them. Is madness, is unfortunate, it's most unfortunate. So we have to keep talking about it. The fact that we've sorted our own class, our own middle class or
Yeah.
upper class or educated class, that's another thing, educated class. Even though when we don't have money, we still figure out a way to pay private school fees. The fact that we figure out our own children's education does not mean we should ignore the 75% or so of children that are in public school, because the most Nigerian children are still in public school where they are not learning. So
And
we have to keep talking, we have to keep advocating.
they'll come at us at a particular point,
Yes.
because if I was speaking with someone yesterday also for the podcast, and she highlighted a situation about scarcity. This false sense of scarcity we tend to have in Nigeria that has fueled tribalism one way or the other, that has made us to believe that because we tend to think we don't have enough resources, so whatever position we find ourselves, let's grab everything for our region, for our family and all that, and save. If we continue in that particular trajectory, also you get to see that kidnappers know who to go kidnap in a particular street. They know where they sense to see that maybe there's money here or there's something that will come down here and all that. Not supporting any of these vices and all that, but then it's a social reality that if you don't take care of the problem of your neighbor's children, you see to it that your own chicken in your own backyard also one day will go missing, because you didn't make it possible for them as a people to be able to fend for themselves one way or the other. And we see kidnapping rampantly done here and there. And I'm not saying there's no pure sense of the banality of evil where somebody can just decide to say, I just want to be evil. But the vast majority of persons go about stealing and all that because one way or the other things have been made disproportionate for them.
Yeah.
You cited Zambia, you cited Kenya. These countries, as well as our own beloved country, started this race for literacy in and about the same period. But they seem to have made more progress than we did. Was it because of political will? Raila Odinga recently is dead, and then he was celebrated nationally, despite the fact that he never became the president and all that. Was it born out of political? Was it a case of political will that we feel at the point, or was it just um, the whole idea of funding? Because many persons talk about money a whole lot and fail to recognize that also the political will of a people also can actually champion a whole lot. If you read the works of Booker T. Washington, if you look at Frederick Douglass, and when Booker T being the first black slave then to going about higher education and all that, you see him. I think when he came back to found his own schools and teaching centers for his own people, he told them beyond the idea of going to school is also the sense of hard work, and you need to join education to hard work and all that, so that you can help your own people and all that. Was it one just funding, or was it a combination of lack of political will on the side of our leaders, the environment, lack of funding, or the so-called, the whole blame of the West is because of colonialism and the likes of that?
No, it's not colonialism. Our our grandparents, the Awolowo, Azikwe, Ahmadu Bello generation, they started figuring out education right during colonial times,
Yeah.
especially Awolowo, Zik, and Zik in the East and the West. And they educated more people than the colonial rulers did um, in their time, in a short time in office. So colonial rule, people that actually experienced it didn't stop them from figuring out how to educate their own people. Um, is mostly political will, uh, elite insulation or isolation. Like I've already made the arguments before, like the so-called elites in society, they are insulated from this issue. Their own children are in public school, are in private schools, so they don't feel as strongly as they should about it. If you see the issues where they cannot provide private solution, like roads, they will be very vocal on those issues. You understand? They will be, and you see that politicians are putting more and more money into building roads, flyovers, and all those bridges and all that. If across the country, because the people that can criticize them, that's what they want. They like the roads because
Like the airport in Abakaliki, I've still never understood. I'm still in shock why nobody even looked at the idea of traffic to a place like Abakaliki. Abakaliki is just like it leads to Ogoja and to Vandikia and then to Cameroon, Ikom, Calabar, and then that's all. And then there's an airport in Calabar that is not doing so well, Margaret Ekpo Airport, and then there's one here. There's even the Enugu Airport is struggling, and up until now, the people of
yeah, that's what their constituency, their fellow wealthy class or the middle class, that the noisy middle class, that's what they want. They want to be able to travel, take their flight from Ado-Ekiti, take their flight from Abakaliki, from Duse, from Guso, and so on. That's what they want. So they do it for them. They provide them with roads, they provide them the airports, they provide them with, and the governors too, of course, they want it too. They want to be able to fly all over
and then
everywhere.
the cutouts that come from contracts and all that.
The schools are not as important to them. Why should we put all the money in school? That's why they even don't take the free money from federal government in the UBE. Sometimes they don't take the money because they don't want to deny their road projects funding. So instead of taking 5 billion from their road projects and get money from federal government, counterpart funding, and go and build some schools, they would rather not do that and put that money into more road. I don't have any issue with road. I'm just using an example
Sure,
of
sure.
things that we are funding at a high rate. They call it infrastructure, which is okay, it's fine. But if you don't educate your population, that infrastructure will probably be useless over time. It could even be damaged because people don't understand some of this infrastructure. They might damage it, they might put, they might use it for things that you don't want and all that. They might deface it. So you need to educate the population too. Anyway, so that's that isolation is a problem, and political will is a big issue because this is a major task. Educating the population is a major task. Even in England here, where they popularized the idea of classroom learning and all that, and they struggled for centuries with education. And it was in the 1870 they came up with an Education Act because up to that point, churches were the one running schools. Churches are non-profits. Government was supporting with some grants and so on. But the schools were concentrated in places where there is strong church presence or like cities and things like that. The rural area, or the poorest part of society, they were not getting educated. They were not getting schools.
Just left for
So,
three boys
yeah.
and the likes
So
of that.
that point where the quality of education in England has become very high. Oxford University, Cambridge has become like the best universities in the world. They still had pockets of neighborhoods and towns where there was significant illiteracy. There was poor education. The same thing that we have today in Nigeria. But they didn't sit on their hand. They didn't say, okay, we have the best education for our middle class and upper class and so on, and people in the cities, and we have best universities and all that. They said we must educate people in hard to reach areas too. If the churches or these non-profit schools cannot get there, then we need to figure out how to get there. So government put money, put resources, put intellectual investment into it, and they were able to solve that problem to get England to universal education or close to it. So we are at that point now. You need serious political will. You need people to politicians and the opposition. We must all agree, because if a governor starts this and the next governor comes and throws everything away, what's the point? Because education is a long-term investment. So we need to, like, the whole society, all of the people in the political class, whether they are in government now or in opposition, they need to recognize that this is a major problem we need to solve, and this is how we'll solve it, regardless of who is in government. We are going to put serious money into this. And that's the third thing. Money. We are not putting enough money in education. Yes, they are stealing money. Yes, money is being stolen. Yes. But let's assume that you can take corruption out of education in Nigeria 100%. The money we have for
Not
education
enough.
is still not enough. So we should not hide behind that is corruption. Even if they are spending what they are getting, it's no, it's all a lie. Look at the budget of other African countries, national budget on education.
And look at our own.
Nigeria is one of the lowest. Nigeria is one of the lowest, spending lowest as share of their budget, or as share of
That's the
national.
money. The money before it's even disbursed, before it's been
Yeah.
partitioned to the
So
different people.
at the national level, we are not spending a lot on education. We can say, okay, state are the one that should be spending on education, but we've already agreed that this thing has to be a national project. That's the only way it can work on a scale. That's the only way. Otherwise, we'll end up with this pocket of states doing well, whereas the rest of the country is not doing well. So federal government itself, national government itself has to put more money into this. State government, they have to put more money into it. And we need to have a coherent national policy action on education, on literacy. For now, we try to have it, but some states are simply not doing, they are not simply not playing their part, their role. They are not playing it, and they are dragging us down. So the national, I will call for a national action plan on education that will be binding on all the states. Yes, decentralization is good, federalism is good and all that. But if it's not working in something, we need to be okay, it's not working here as much as we want it. Let's have a national standard that must be met by all the states. States that are not meeting it, the federal government should have a mechanism for directly intervening in those states' education. So the way Tinubu declared state of emergency in Rivers, when the governor and his godfather could not agree on how to run the state and they were fighting, let us have this should be more structured than that one. Let us have a standard. If you don't meet it, the federal government can declare a state of emergency in your education.
And then they audit your account to know.
They audit your account, they second a commissioner a federal commissioner for education to your state who reports directly to the National Assembly or to the president, whatever. And they get you up to speed and then they hand it over back to you. If you dip again, they can take it over again. So your money for education, they take it at source. But that will require a lot of, political will, because you need to pass laws, you need to amend laws and all that. But we need to figure out a way to get all these governors on it to agree to an action plan that will have clear KPIs. And if they are not meeting it, we'll have mechanism for redress. We cannot just leave them and hope for the best, which is what we are doing now. Federal government gives them money through UBE. Federal government provides syllabus, curriculum, policy direction. But if they don't do it, they don't do it. There is nothing the federal government can do. The hope is that the states, the citizens of the indigenous, the voters in those states can vote them out with a better politician. But it's not working. It's 26 years now. It's not working. The federal government should have a mandate. The national government should have a mandate to be able to intervene directly. It doesn't even have to do it. I'm not saying Abuja should run the school themselves. They can get private players, non-profits, the best mind in this country, and send them to that state to run the education for that state, and give them the money that should have gone to that state. Give the money to them, and they run the school until the standard gets to where we want it to be, and then we hand it over back to the state. And letting them know that if you default again, if you go below this minimum standard, we'll take over again. So in a state and available a room to declare a national a state of emergency in a particular state, that might be what will get these people off their get them to work for education or for literacy. So the political will has to be there, and that's to be a national movement, a national noise, advocacy, and everything. And then we hope that we are able to get people to get children to school and get them educated. Teaching kids how to read and write is not rocket science. It's not something we have to reinvent. All the syllabus, all the curricula, everything, they're already there. If you go to Federal Ministry of Education now, they already have them. They are constantly updating them. They will be telling you about, we need to change our curriculum. In primary and secondary education, we have up to this curriculum. I'm not saying they are perfect, but they are enough to create educated population. They are enough. With the intellectual work has been done at that level. Federal Ministry of Education, they are there. What remains is get teachers, get classroom in shape. Our kids should not be learning in under rooms that are leaking. So get teachers there. Pay the teachers. Pay them, and then supervise them.
There used to be this
school inspectors
supervision going on then those days, whereby
you need to bring them back, and they need to have teeth.
And those days, you see the teachers
not just backing
their best selves when the supervisors are coming.
You need to bring them back. You need to bring them back. The teachers themselves, the head teachers themselves, they need to be on KPIs. It's not Ogata or Gota or Ala Rokwe. It's not that whether we work or not, we'll get paid. It should not be. You are teachers. You are head teachers. Your job is to teach. You have no excuse. You have kids for 6 years coming every day to your classroom, and they are not learning.
You take them to farms.
No,
and you give them melons to.
We should not accept it. We should not accept it. So KPIs for everyone.
Even abroad,
from teachers to commissioner.
KPIs. Even abroad, surveys go on for almost everybody running different, even lecturers in universities. our days going to universities abroad. Also, you see at the end of the semester, the professors themselves will tell you, take 15 minutes to fill out a survey on behalf of me and submit it to the faculty. It tells them whether they should renew my tenure or not, or whether I should be left on my own, and the likes of that. You ended your article by saying Nigeria needs to get serious about literacy and the likes of that. What does seriousness look like in concrete policy terms? And if you had to look ahead 10 years, what uh, what happens if Nigeria continues on its current path, which we know is not possible? If it continues like this, it deteriorates down even faster. And what becomes possible if we tend to change the course? So 10 years from now, if we're looking and living our situations the way our situations are, or if we tend to change, what can happen in 10 years? Bearing in mind, you also talked about the mission schools down in India and the likes of that. What can we see change in 10 years? I, as a person, people keep on saying Nigeria cannot get better. I say it's not true, because I've looked at post-Soviet Eastern Europe in the last 6-7 years or so, and I can tell you, in 30 years, you can say whatever you want to say about the Soviet Union, they changed. There were people standing on for bread lines going on end up until 1989, when Nigeria was supposedly an independent free country. These guys were not allowed to go to school. The Soviet fed her population with alcohol. Up until today, there's still an alcohol problem in most Balkan countries, in most countries that were the daughters of Stalin and the likes of that. But they have been able to, tell themselves, okay, we were occupied from Romania and all that, from Poland and all that, but we cannot continue complaining forever. And in 30, 35 years, they have been able to change themselves significantly. And people should not forget that in 1989, China was having one of its largest protests, that saw the one-man protest against the tanks in the square down there in China and all that. And it has
Tiananmen
come out
Square,
of
yeah.
communism. It has gone back to communism and all that. But whatever that is, progress can be made in a short period of time. People think we need like 500 years before we can make progress and all that. This was the sentiments lots of persons had in South Africa. That's the whites, that the blacks were allowed to now share the same square with them. This was before, shortly before apartheid ended in South Africa, or at least on paper, that it would take the blacks about only God knows how long before they will be educated and then be brought up at speed and all that. But we've seen that South Africa is doing well. It can still do better. It's having problem with America the same way almost every African country is having with Trump and the likes of that. In 10 years or maybe 20 years, it's a long time, but what can happen? It can come very fast. I remember when Buhari was contesting here, and now we are down here 12 years now, and 10 years down 11 years down the line, and it's 10 years. 10 years is a long time, but it can come very, very fast. Also, what can change and what can get worse in this short period of time?
A lot can be done in 10 years. Like I said, basic education is not rocket science. It's just named people who are serious, political will, and that's it. It's not like we are poor as a country financially, but we have a bit of money that, if we deploy it the right way, we follow up, we minimize corruption, we can at least get all the kids to school, or 90% of the children that are out of school, get them to school, and we can up our school literacy to something close to 80-90% in 10 years. We can do that. It's not rocket science. What is the problem that we have is that the schools are not enough, so build more schools.
Not the smart schools of Enugu.
you don't need to put. I'm not even. I'm not a fan of model schools. Build basic quality schools, but not billions of naira on one school building.
My faculty has
Because you don't have enough resources, so you need to spread it.
my faculty as a bachelor student was erected, I think in 1870. I can't remember now, but many years ago I was told it was that old and they didn't change anything. It continued to be like that, woods
If
everywhere.
you build quality building, it's not fancy, quality. You paint it very nice for children, do painting on the wall and all that. Put books there and their teachers. It's fine.
Enough.
You don't. We don't need to
Not all the
overthink.
boards.
You don't need to overthink this. When Governor Aregbesola in Osun was spending billions on his model schools, I was like, this is too much money on one school. Let's spread it across several schools. But anyway, governors will do what governors want to do. But when we get serious, in 10 years we can educate all these kids. We can build schools where they should be, get teachers there, get supervisors and inspectors to follow up on what is going on in those schools, monitor performance, and reward performance. We don't reward performance in Nigeria. Everybody just gets promotion. Everybody just gets new salary scale when it comes out. We need to start rewarding performance. So, for example, if you put a principal in a school or a head teacher in a primary school, and that performance of those children goes up in 2 years, what's the mechanism for rewarding that teacher, for the other head teacher? Nothing. You just take that head teacher, you take him to another school. That's it. You just keep transferring him around, but you are not rewarding him. You are not rewarding the teachers. So if there are schools performing well, public primary school performing well, I would say we focus on primary schools first. Give their teacher extra money every year. So you have a national exam, NECO, for primary schools. Ask them to enroll their primary 6 children. They enroll them. And for every child that pass, you give them something. You give the teacher a bonus. The teachers get a bonus on every child they are able to pass. If they are able to pass, 50% of their children are able to pass, you give them extra bonus. 75% are able to pass, you give them extra bonus. That's what they do in private sector, right?
Yeah.
In banking and finance and all those places, they give you extra money. Even though you and I might be on the same salary scale, doesn't mean that we'll earn the same money at the end of the year. Let's try it.
They have work of the month. They have work of the week. I see my colleagues, they get to post.
Let's have it. Let's have it. And then also let's have quality in the first instance, like those teachers. Some of them should not be in classroom. That's the truth.
Oh my goodness.
So some teachers don't have the capacity. Not everybody can teach. But because we are paying so little, we don't have option than to just take anyone who has indicated interest. But do we really need to do that? Are we that poor that we cannot say that minimum salary for teacher is 100,000? Are we that poor as a country? Because there are some states still paying 40,000, 50,000 to teachers, 70,000 to teachers today.
That's even for the public school or the private.
I'm talking public schools, because most of the problem is in public schools. So I'm focusing on public schools. Private schools, solution for government, for those that are not doing well, will be, have standard and enforce it. You can close down private school if they are not doing their job. But for public school, you don't close them. You leave them and they keep ruining children's lives. So, talking public schools, get quality teachers there. Quality teachers into public primary school, get them there and pay them well, then give them bonuses on performance of their children. Let them go and write NECO, an exam that is external, that they cannot manipulate, and then you use that to reward the teacher. Do that nationally, on a national level. And you see the performance will keep growing year in, year out before we even get to the 10th year. Because like I said, It is not rocket science to teach kids how to read and write and be able to answer questions in English and mathematics. It is not rocket science. It's something that you can do within a year. You can teach a child to read fluently within a year if you put in the effort. And within 2-3 years, you can teach him how to do basic mathematics in primary school. So, and then, teachers, they have 6 years to do this, not 1 year, not 2 years, 6 years to do this. They can get it done. But we need to get people that can get it done into those schools. We need to pay them well. We need to give them bonuses and performance and pay and reward them based on performance and punish those that are not doing their job. So, carrot and stick and carrot. We can do it in 10 years. We can do it. So, federal government, instead of all those money just going into buildings, can go into incentives for teachers, incentives for head teachers, into books for the schools. I think they're already doing that, but more of it, buying books and all that for the schools. So I think in 10 years we can do that. If we don't do it, if we don't get this number done, there is a possibility that instead of going up, the number can actually start coming down. That means our problem can actually get worse.
Because there'll be intermarriage, there'll be interconversations between states and all that, and then love, they say, sometimes can become blind. So you can even turn a blind eye to somebody who ordinarily is not at your level just because you think he's someone who is beautiful and all that, and then from there your children also can become friends with other people, and then it just messes up everything we've done so far.
Yeah. So we need to address it. If we don't address it, it's a problem. Yeah, we need to. And lastly, this can actually be a way to put money back into people's pockets. I'm talking about parents who actually are poor, but they are forcing themselves to send their children to private school because they've lost all confidence in public schools. And these parents are struggling. They are not like, they are not middle class, they are not upper class. They are selling stuff they should not be selling just to get this kid to private school. They shouldn't have to do that. In any normal, a functional education system, 80 to 90% of the children will be in public schools. In the UK, is around 93%. Only 7% of children are in private schools. A lot of parents will be able to retain some of their income rather than put it in. It's not like they don't want to do it. They don't want to send them to private school. But they don't have any option if they want them to get educated. So if you increase we see it in any states that tries any decent step towards educational reform, you will see that enrollment will go up in public schools in that state, and then it will come down again when the parents are saying that actually they are just lying. The standard is not going up. But if it's not a lie, if you actually follow up the way to work, a lot of parents will withdraw their kids and put them in public schools, and we are saving them money that they can put into other things that are important to the family. It could even be food. It could be clothes. It could
Saving for
be
the future,
anything.
maybe
It
going
can
for
boost that part of
vacation
the economy.
and all that.
Yeah, because when you look at states like Lagos, where most kids are going to private school, that's not healthy for the parents, the struggling parents. But Lagos is also the only state, or one or two, the second being Anambra, that are actually doing decently. You can give them pass mark
In education.
in education, like in class education. The literacy rate for their children that are already in school is very high. Those two states but those two states also have a lot of private involvement in education, which on one hand is good for the quality, but on the other hand, a lot of parents are struggling to pay school fees they have no business paying. They should be in public schools. Their children should be in public schools. So if you increase quality of education in public school, you build more public schools all over Lagos, all over Anambra, all over the state, more parents go into those schools, they're able to save money, and that's good for them. And dividend of democracy, whatever you want to call it, is good. So we cannot rely on the private to do the job for us, even though the private schools are doing a decent job, not a great job, but a decent job. But we can't rely on them because most people cannot afford them. And some of the people that are killing themselves to afford the school fees, they shouldn't have to do that. If the government, if they do their job very well in improving quality in public school. So we need to do it for the sake of those children and their parents, and the sake of the country, because the country will enjoy the benefits of having a literate population. I have no doubt about that.
Wow, that is a whole lot down there. There's a lot of stuff we've covered in a period of time we didn't even plan or schedule to have down here. But after writing this article and after also like looking at a whole lot of other stuff, and you've sat with this data for a long period of time now and all that, what gives you concern and what still gives you hope about Nigeria's educational future and its present?
What gives me hope are that we have a lot of people. I see a lot of people on social media, in person, in conversation, who are as passionate as me, they want to do something about it. And I think that is good, even though they don't have any reason for doing that because their own children are in private schools, but they still know that we are all affected by this problem. So that gives me hope that I'm not shouting into the into an empty room. I'm shouting, and there are people who are interested in what I have to say, and we can come together and we can find a way to keep putting pressure, to keep guiding governments, encouraging them to get them to do what is best for education. So that really gives me hope. I'm also hopeful because I think that the fact that we have a decent private school system is also gives me hope that there are learnings we can take from them and apply it to the public school system. So that is a good thing because we do have some very good private schools in Nigeria that when you take children from there to anywhere in the world, they fit in. They are able to learn. So you understand what I'm trying to say? And those schools are being run by Nigerians. I'm not even talking about all these
British
schools with British principals and all that. I don't know why anybody will still be paying British principals to come to Nigeria now. We have the head teachers, we have principals, Nigerians that are very good. I'm
just
telling
give them
you,
the chance,
very good.
opportunities.
They are doing a good job in their private schools. Their kids are passing international exam as if it is nothing. So, and I'm not talking about schools with paying tens of millions of naira. I'm talking people paying maybe 300,000 a term, which is a lot of money, I know.
Of course,
But
yeah.
compared to international school fees elsewhere, it's not a lot. And they are able to achieve those results. So their experience, their knowledge, those I think we can tap into later on. So yeah, I think there's a critical mass of knowledge, of expertise in our private schools that we can tap into for the private sector in how to do things. But we need to be open to doing things in a new way for us to be able to do that. One of the things that I envisage for Nigeria is to decouple the principal or head teacher position from the normal civil service route. You just promote a teacher to
More or
become a
less, it becomes like
teacher.
a professional kind of
Yeah,
route that
you
will take
just
you that
if
particular.
you stay long enough in your teaching, even without making any impact, without having any impact, you
You
can
just
become a
go
head
up,
teacher.
up, up.
I want us to decouple it. It should be earned. That should be like the standard of your children, of in your classes over the years. What are the results in NECO? What are the results? And we should be able to bring people from outside the system to be head teachers if they've demonstrated expertise elsewhere. You understand? Like maybe a principal of a private school somewhere that has done very well. Their children have done very well in WAEC or in UTME. Pick them, pay them better, poach them, put them in a public school, and task them to repeat um the the feats. But for now, we're not able to do that because everything is coupled together as is in civil service language and system, which doesn't really allow for innovation, for flexibility that you need. Sometimes you can find talent in the system. Sometimes you need to go outside of the system to find talent. So anyway, I think the privates they want the part of it doing very well. They give me some hope that at least Nigeria we know that Nigerians can teach and
Of course.
Nigerians can manage a school. That it tells me that because when you go
Nigerians
to the
are in
public,
France at the moment doing primary school jobs and secondary school jobs and teaching. And there's this phenomenon also about UK parents who left Nigeria because they want to get better education for their children abroad, now paying Nigerian teachers to get to like teach their children online, but from Nigeria. So I have a couple of friends who still do like some part-time jobs from Nigeria. They teach children abroad from French, even German, and all of those type of stuff. They teach from Nigeria, and just shows you the sheer sense of resilience we as a people have. You know, we
yeah.
learn
So
French.
we have the skills, we have the talent. We just they are mismatched right now, and we need to figure out a way to just bring them together. You know, the Nigerians abroad getting teachers from home is often a case of you want the kids to have more academic attention outside of school, which is something we learn from Nigeria. Even
Sure.
after you come from school in Nigeria, you do afternoon lessons. So either you go elsewhere or your parents they get a teacher that comes to your house. That's something many of us grew up knowing
Yeah.
um, as um, um, as children. So now that we are adults, we are outside the country. Of course, we still want that contact, but we cannot afford
The costs
to
abroad.
pay to pay a teacher. So of course we go back home, and we know we wouldn't go back home if we are not sure that we have the talent. But we know the talent are there. These teachers they can teach. We have teachers that can teach, but we need to put them in the public sector, and we need to monitor them. We need to supervise them. We need to encourage them and reward them for their good performance. But talent we have, we do.
Opportunity is not universal, but
Yeah,
talent is.
yeah. So that's something I think that it gives me hope in a way that I know that those talents are there. They are waiting to be tapped. But when we are ready to tap them, I hope it's not too late and they've not all jackpot by then. We can tap them, and although we can bring them back and pay them well, pay them by performance, and we hope that things will be great. So that really it gives me great hope in the future. Let's just keep the conversation going. Keep don't let up on the pressure. Let's keep putting pressure on the political class and on ourselves too. Whatever we can make little impact. If you can support a school, public school in your area, don't say it's government that should do it. Yes, government that should do it, but they are not doing it. Those kids, do you want their their lives to continue that way? If you can intervene, you have a bit of money, go and intervene. If it's by giving them books, if it's by visiting them and teaching them, please go and do it.
This
Volunteer for a school near you and so on. The countries that we look up to,
we do community service.
run they run on volunteer services also.
If I add
Yeah,
volunteer services on my CV, it will be like how many pages, from radio and all that. It's a whole lot. And
yeah, so definitely we should do more of it, and we help wherever we can help, because these are still ultimately they are our children, they are our younger ones, our future colleagues at work. Some of them are going to grow up and meet us at work
mhm.
if we educate them very well. So yeah, let's do whatever we can in our own way, and yeah, because we usually people just everybody is so focus on their own family, they forget that all these children are not, they won't just disappear from society.
Yeah.
They will still be there, whether you educate them or not. They will still be there, and
But
yeah.
like you were just giving your last comment as we wrap up. It reminded me of a conversation you and Pai Kedi had, and you were responding to him, and you said, I just had to pick up my iPad, and then I'll just read that for you as we close. You said, I agree with you that books are expensive in Nigeria, but there are at least 1 million families in Nigeria with enough disposable income. Why aren't they buying books? And if I should add to the question you had asked down there is, why aren't they buying books for themselves and their children? Why aren't they building libraries in their own houses? Because you go to most of these elite houses, you even still lack, you don't see infrastructure where you can see a well befitting library start somewhere in the world or in a particular room. You see a very big mansion, you can see a wine cellar that can be as big as whatsoever, but you don't see a reading space or even a praying space. Not everybody should be religious, but at least the sense of this, your comment down here of disposable income, why aren't we seeing more people supporting the neighboring library that is about to collapse, if we even have any? Because yesterday I was having a conversation with another author from Alabama, and I just told her, I'm like, I was just thinking about the street where I grew up or the neighborhood where I grew up, and if you check the communities around there, you can't find libraries, you can't find books. Like they've never existed at all. So I'm like, okay, my family, my mom made sure we had books and all of this type of stuff. But what about my colleagues? What about some of the persons that first they were struggling just to eat? Some had enough money, maybe they do Christmas clothes, Christmas shoes, Christmas order, but there was never a time books were factored into the family's budget and all that. Why is that so as we close?
Yeah, I mean, it probably boils down to quality of education, um, orientation, and all that. Some. Look at the old generation. Some of them they had just standard 6 education, which is like primary 5 or primary 6. Um, but they could read things fall apart. They could read Shakespeare. They could read Charles Dickens. They could read, you know, and my father-in-law, may God rest his soul, is late now. He had those old school education. He didn't spend a lot of time in secondary school. He didn't go to university. But if you see his business writing, his letters to his customers abroad, his emails to his customer abroad, is better than what a university graduate will write today. So the quality of education they got in 5 years, 6 years of primary school then was very high. So it opened them to books and all that. And we don't, I meet a lot of people of my age that will tell me, I don't know how you do it. Do what? I don't know how you read. Like, I will tell them is the other way around. I don't know
How
how
you don't read?
you read. Like, with the education that we got, you are university graduates. How can you not read? Like, Sodiq, I could just can't read. Where will I have time to read? What do you mean? Where will you have time to read? Just 30 minutes every day.
Can do a lot in a month.
You in a month you probably finish a small book, or in 2 months you'll finish one book. So in a year you read at least 6 books.
Six
If
books.
if all uneducated Nigerians are buying 6 books every year,
Uh,
we'll have a healthy publishing industry in Nigeria.
just 6 books.
Okay,
Just six.
just 6 books a year and 1 million family. That's 6 million copies. Our publishers will be swimming in money.
Even
So
if the cost of books are not cheaper, even if it remains, because we contribute money for our show, be
we
so what
sometimes we exaggerate our poverty.
uh uh
Um, I'm not
How
talking
much
about
is
the.
it? Over,
I'm not
over,
talking about everyone in society. I'm talking about the top 10%. Sometimes we exaggerate our poverty. We are not that poor. There are enough people in Nigeria that can afford to buy books
comfortably, even at the
to
current
make
piece at
to
the
make
moment.
publishing viable in the country. There are enough. Even with just 500,000, let's say 500,000 families buying 10 books. That's 5 million copies of books sold. Spread that across our publishers. It is not
And
small. It's not small. If they are buying poetry, they are buying fiction, they are buying non-fiction history books, published in Nigeria, just 10. Say 10 is 10,000 naira a copy. That's 100,000, or let's say 150,000. Are you telling me that we don't have 500,000 families, 500,000 men and women in Nigeria who can put 150K on book? 500,000, we
in
do.
a year,
In
not
a
in,
year, not every month. We
in a
do. But they will put the money in other things. They will put the money on gold. They will put the money on clothes. They will put the money. I'm not saying all those things are bad. I'm just saying we just need to put more money in books for our family. Get our kids reading from when they are young. Read to them. Is a betrayal of our teachers and everyone who invested in our education if we don't raise our own children to be readers. It's a betrayal. Because what was the point of them teaching us how to read, and we are not, helping the next generation to also fall in love with books? It makes no sense. So get those books, get your kids reading, get those books to public schools close to you, support them with books, your old books, your new books, give them books, you know, and it will go a long way. It will go a long way to helping. Even if you are just one or two copies of you are able to get to a school, you can inspire children. You can inspire a lot of children. But yeah, we need to read. We need to also inspire kids to read.
wow. It's been a wonderful conversation. It's been an enlightening period for me and my audience down here, and I hope whosoever would come to listen to our conversation down here will equally come to accept that we have not indeed had a boring conversation down here. This is still boring conversation nonetheless. This conversation has been with Sodiq Alabi, centered on his article on Even Steps, Nigeria's 26-year struggle to educate its children. We have been looking at the distance between policy, the sense of ambition down there also, and the idea of lived outcomes, and the persistence of to say that, but the persistence of functional illiteracy and the deep regional inequalities that continue to shape opportunity, and the limits of decentralization in addressing a national crisis as the one we have at the moment. What has emerged down here, if we want to look at it critically, is not simply a failure of schools, but a failure of our sense of urgency. For me, that's what I'm taking away from here. Our sense of lack of coordination and a lack of political seriousness to see that things get better. The questions we've raised down here do not end with this conversation. We hope they remain open, and as our guests have prompted and urged us, there should be conversation we shouldn't get tired of having. There's this fear that you can, you know, over talk about something, and then if that's a right word there to even use, you can talk about a particular conversation over and over again, and it becomes too cliche down there. But that's not the case. It's something that we shouldn't get tired of talking about. They say a mother who has 20 children knows what happens at night in the community at all times because of insecurity and the likes of that. These questions ought to remain open because they are pressing and they are unavoidable for a country that still hopes to build its future on education and the likes of that. I thank our guest for granting us a chance to talk to him today, and we hope on more better day, and the days coming ahead, or the months or the years coming ahead, that things get better. His non-profit and all he stands to contribute to our conversations in the country, also gets to do better and better and better and better into the future. In January, Edu Intel will be running a fundraiser. We'll also attach a link down here to that fundraising when the time comes in January. Before January, this conversation will be published. But when the fundraiser is ongoing and all that, we'll attach the link to the conversation to this particular episode, and we hope that what he's trying to do, as well as many Nigerians, will come to live long enough, as opposed to the short-lived projects many other initiatives have taken. I I thank you most graciously for granting us the chance, particularly this length of time, to talk to you as opposed to what was agreed. I never had a boring conversation, and thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, Abina.
Thank you.